Over 80 years ago, one of the most famous aviators to have ever lived flew her last flight. In the time since, no concrete evidence has been found that could paint the picture of what truly happened. To this day, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart remains a mystery. Amelia Earhart was born in Atchison, Kansas in 1897. And from childhood, she went against the grain. She wanted adventure rather than being the lady that her mother wanted. When she was older, in 1918, she left college and helped care for wounded soldiers from World War I as a nurse's aide in Toronto. After World War I, she started studying pre-med in New York City, but left in 1920 after her parents demanded she lived with them in California. In December of 1920, she attended an air show in Long Beach, where she took a 10-minute plane ride. Afterwards, she said, "By the time I had got 200 or 300 feet off the ground, I knew I had to fly." The next year, in 1921, she started taking lessons that cost her $1 per minute from a female pilot named Nita Snook, and she also started saving for her own plane. Later in the same year, she managed to purchase a bright yellow second-hand Kinner Airster that she nicknamed the Canary. She then got her pilot's license 2 years later. When she was working as a social worker in Boston, Massachusetts, she was selected to be a passenger on a flight across the Atlantic Ocean in 1928. Wilma Schultz and Louis Gordon were piloting the plane. When the three landed in Buryport, Wales, Amelia Earhart was established as an international celebrity, and her ever-growing popularity was pushed by publisher George Putnam, who Earhart would later marry in 1931. In the same year, she hit a record-setting 18,415-foot altitude in an autogyro, which is sort of like a cross between a plane and a helicopter. Earhart then decided to cross the Atlantic Ocean again, but this time she would fly solo. In 1932, she piloted her Lockheed Vega from Harbour Grace, Newfoundland to Londonderry, Northern Ireland.
I took off the famous Harbour Grace runway at dusk, about 7:30 I believe. I flew for a couple of hours while sunset lasted, and then 2 more hours as the moon came up over a bank of clouds. I had fair weather for 4 hours. Then I ran into a storm, which was one of the most severe I have ever been in. I milled around in the storm here for probably an hour, and with difficulty kept my course. I had been troubled with my exhaust manifold burning through all night. A weld broke shortly after I left Harbour Grace, and I could see the damage increasing as the night wore on. I found specific thunderstorms probably 300 or 400 miles off the coast of Ireland. I believe I saw land first about the middle. I decided to come down anyway in the best available pasture. I got down without any trouble and taxied to the front door of a surprised farmer's cottage. After receiving a real Irish welcome, I took a Paramount plane to London and there received a real English welcome.
She went on to set more records, making the first solo flight from Hawaii to California in 1935, and she also made the first solo flight from LA to Mexico City in the same year.
And what did you carry on the trip?
You mean to eat?
Yeah, to eat and drink.
Well, I carried some water, of course, because my cockpit is very warm, and I carried a sandwich in case. I didn't eat it, though. I carried some hot chocolate and the old reliable tomato juice.
What kind of a sandwich was it?
Chicken sandwich.
Challenging herself further, Amelia Earhart wanted to make an historic attempt to circumnavigate the globe along the equator. Along with her navigator Fred Noonan, Amelia Earhart in her Lockheed Electra travelled from Oakland in California and continued flights across the globe, making stops across the US, across Brazil, through Africa and Asia, to Australia, and then where she took off for the final time, in Lae, New Guinea.
The round-the-world ladybird and her crew, ready for an adventure that nobody has ever tried before. Amelia Earhart, out to circle the Earth at the latitude of the equator, and that's the Earth's greatest circle.
After Lae, the next destination was Howland Island, which was in the central Pacific Ocean. And from there, they would fly to Honolulu, Hawaii, and then back to Oakland in California. Unfortunately, the pair never made it to Howland Island. On July 2nd, 1937, the pair took off from Lae. This flight would be the longest of them all. Posted close by to Howland Island was a Coast Guard cutter, the Itasca, which would guide the pair in for a landing. On the day, there were overcast skies, high winds, and along with fuel running low and faulty radio transmissions, contact was lost between the plane and the Itasca. The plane and the two occupants were never found or officially seen after their takeoff from Lae. The official Navy report at the time stated they ran out of fuel, crashed in the ocean, and drowned. A year and a half later, Earhart was declared legally dead in January 1939. However, there is a lack of definitive evidence to confirm this official version of events. So with the lack of definitive evidence, there are always theories that arise with situations like this. One of the main theories that people stand by is the theory that the two were castaways on a small island, which was in the region of where Howland Island was in the Pacific Ocean. Evidence used in support of this theory include radio signals. Signals were picked up by some Pan Am towers stationed in the Pacific, which were theorized to be from Amelia Earhart. When these were traced, they were traced to the Phoenix Islands, and one of these islands include Nikomororo Island, which is the island that people theorize the most that this is where Amelia ended up. There were also reports of radio signals being picked up all across North America. For example, a girl in Wyoming claimed that she picked up a signal that she believed to be from Amelia Earhart, where Amelia stated that she was on a reef south of the equator. A woman in Canada stated that she heard Amelia say that the navigator was injured, and the most comprehensive was from a girl in Florida who listened to radio signals coming through for 2 hours, and she also took notes for the entire time that she was listening. At the beginning of the radio signals, Amelia was repeating her name, and the girl recalls hearing something that sounded like New York, which is thought to be referencing the ship Norwich City, which is close to Nikomororo Island. People question how these signals travelled so far from the other side of the Pacific Ocean all the way to North America, even to the opposite side of North America. But there are signals known as harmonics that can travel great distances, so it is possible. At the end of the signal that the girl in Florida was picking up, she recalls hearing Amelia state that the water was rising. This is important as the radio wouldn't have worked without the engine running to charge it, and the engine could not run when submerged underwater. So if the water was rising, then that could be the reason that the radio signals then cut out. Another piece of evidence that points to the castaway theory is there was a partial skeleton that was found on Nikomororo Island in 1940, and at the time it was identified as a shorter than average male. However, the skeleton was then lost. Because it was lost, there was no further investigation conducted, but it was theorized later that the skeleton could have been a match for a female of Amelia Earhart's height. The skeleton is now thought to be found in 2018 in a museum on the island of Tarawa. It hasn't been confirmed if it is definitely the same skeleton, but since this was found, the bones have been re-examined and samples have been sent for DNA analysis, but I cannot find an update on the DNA tests as of yet. For people that disagree with the castaway situation, they mainly bring up the fact that there was a Navy search of all surrounding islands, so somehow the pair would have been missed by this Navy search. And people also believe that there was not enough fuel to reach the Phoenix Islands. Going back to the actual flight and the things leading up to the flight. In order to pay for the round the world journey, Amelia had to go on a fundraising campaign and was pushed past her limit, and she had less time to prepare for the journey than she should have. She did not have a radio technician traveling with her, and she also didn't get the adequate training on the radio in her new plane before the journey. Both her and Fred Noonan could not use Morse code either, so they decided that they weren't going to take the Morse key so that they could save weight on the plane. Also, from the reports from the Itasca, it seems that Earhart's radio seemed to be able to transmit messages but not receive messages, which indicates that either there was something wrong with the radio or it was being used incorrectly. The main evidence behind the official story of the pair crashing in the middle of the Pacific and drowning centers around the question of fuel consumption. So, out of all the flights of the Round the World tour, this was the longest of them all. They had 1,100 gallons of fuel when they left Leh, but due to high winds and bad weather, Amelia had to ascend the plane a lot higher than first intended, which would have consumed a lot of fuel. And also, due to the strong winds, she had to increase her speed, which would increase fuel consumption even more. Because of the additional consumption that was going on, this means that she would have ran out of fuel a lot earlier. Now, the main gripe with this is, how has the plane not been found yet? There have been so many searches of the seabed and the surrounding areas. But something to keep in mind with that is it took 70 years to find the Titanic shipwreck, and that had eyewitness survivors. And then imagine looking for a small plane with 2 people in the same environment. Other theories include the potential that the pair managed to land somewhere, but where they landed was controlled by Japan, who at the time were in contention with America. So they may have been taken as prisoners of war and possibly executed. It's also been theorized that Amelia and Noonan were flying that area to actually spy for the American government. There was also a photo that surfaced that people theorized had Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan in the photo, but this was later debunked, as it was confirmed to have been taken before the pair even went missing. And another theory was that Amelia faked the entire thing so that she could lead a new life. And there was also a woman in America that was identified by people theorizing this as Amelia Earhart, and she was harassed, unfortunately. But there has been no confirmation that this woman is Amelia Earhart, and she confirms herself that she is not. So the main 2 theories are the theory that she crashed on an island, was a castaway, and survived for some time until the elements eventually took hold, or that she did run out of fuel before she could reach Howland Island and unfortunately crashed into the ocean. So hopefully something definitive surfaces soon, but for the moment it's still an open-ended mystery. Please let me know in the comments what you think may have happened, which theory resonates with you. One thing that can be said though is, the mystery aside, Amelia Earhart was truly someone that had immense passion for something and she went for it, and she constantly challenged herself. She didn't want to live a normal, standard life as she was expected to by her parents, especially her mother. She knew that she loved flying and she went for it, and I think looking at quotes from Amelia, you can tell that she wanted to encourage that in others as well, especially women, as at the time it wasn't as conventional for a woman to be pursuing such careers. But I admire her for going for what she wanted and doing what she loved. She never did it for the fame or the fortune, she only ever did it for the love of flight. If you like this video, please drop a like, and if you want to see more videos from my channel, please press the subscribe button. and press the notification bell if you want to get notified each time I upload a video. Thank you so much for watching, and take care. Bye.